Good afternoon and welcome to BIZTECH's Asia Pacific Cybersecurity Show. It's Monday, the 16th of January. Every Monday at 2 p.m. Singapore time, we will update the region on the latest threats and incidents to help you better protect yourselves. Now, joining in the conversation today to bring an expert lens for the show is my co-host, Benjamin Ang. He's the head of Cyber and Homeland Defence Center of Excellence for National Security at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies at the Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. Ben, once again, welcome to the show and thanks for coming on the show again.
Thanks, Brian. And yes, sorry, the name of my organization is pretty long.
It is quite a mouthful. But Ben, let's start off by a key thing that happened last week, which is really the suspected state hacking of military and NGO secrets from a couple of Asian countries, led by a group that calls itself Dark Pink. What do we know about this?
Okay, first of all, we know it's not a K-pop group. It's not the other one. But Dark Pink is a name given by the cybersecurity researchers for this, what is called an advanced persistent threat. It's basically a group that is advanced, meaning that they've got the skills, they've got the technology, and persistent, meaning that they're going to stay in your networks as long as they can to get out as much information as they can. Then for a lot of people who are, say, you're not government or you're not military, you're thinking, what does it mean to me, right? Surely I'm not a target of these kind of like huge advanced persistent threats. Surely that, if I'm not in a government department or a military organization, they're not going to come for me. Why would they go after, and if you read the report, non-profits and religious organizations? So some of it could be accidental, maybe, but people who are using this kind of resources may have other objectives because non-profits and religious organizations are also ways to get into their main targets, which are government and military.
Interesting. So it's like almost like a Trojan horse.
Like a Trojan horse. It's like breaking into your neighbor's house because your neighbor is not as secure as you. And then going through your adjoining wall. Because government and military networks are usually well protected and the people in them are usually well trained in security, right? We hope.
Mm-hmm.
But these people also volunteer in non-profits and they also take part in religious organizations. They may volunteer. And these non-profits and religious organizations are much less protected against cyber attacks. They don't have the resources, they don't have money or manpower to secure themselves. So if there's a government or military personnel who's a member of a non-profit or volunteer at a religious organization, their personal data, their email contact, their personal passwords are all being stored by this insecure place. And hopefully they don't reuse their personal passwords for their office system.
Interesting, yeah. So that's really a crucial thing. Now, Ben, I'm going to stop you there just to give context to the audience on what really happened. Now, the bulk of these attacks had apparently singled out military bodies, government ministries and agencies, as well as religious and non-profit organizations in a couple of countries, namely Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Vietnam, and the outlier, Bosnia-Herzegovina, with one unsuccessful intrusion reported against an unnamed European state development body based in Vietnam. So this is really quite an extensive attack across the region.
It is, definitely. And who knows how many other organizations have been infiltrated and don't know. Because how often is a non-profit or a religious organization going to do a scan in its systems? That's not their core job.
Okay, so what do we need to do, Ben? So if we are volunteers or we think that we could have been possibly one of the people who were compromised, what do we need to do?
First of all, I really hope that you're not using the same password for your volunteer work that you're using for the office. If you are, you need to change it and never do it again. Secondly, watch out for emails that seem to be coming in from your volunteer organization or religious organization. Because one of the other parts of the other reports I've been reading is that this threat group is very good at doing spear phishing. Spear phishing is more than the usual phishing. Phishing means they'll send you an email that pretends to come from the NGO or religious group, when actually you click it, it's going to plant something on your computer.
Okay.
Spear phishing means it's directly targeted at you because they went into your NGO, they went into your religious organization, and they found out something about you that allows them to send a very personal, convincing looking email. So unfortunately, we have to be very careful about every email that we read. Even if it looks like it's coming from a group that we're volunteering in, stop and think a while. Wait, could this be asking me to click and download something? Because you're going to download something like a audio recorder onto your computer. Can you imagine an audio recorder on your personal laptop now recording everything that's happening in your room? Even if you're having a confidential Zoom call side by side, that will get recorded as well. So don't click. Be careful even if you receive messages that appear to come from your NGO or volunteer organization or religious organization.
Okay, then Ben, if I'm a non-profit or religious organization or some kind of volunteer organization, how can I get help? Because obviously I don't have a lot of resources. Who can I go to for help?
I'd say there's two ways. There are basic steps that you can take. There are government agencies like Singapore Cybersecurity Agency that provide free info on the website on how you can secure your organization. Like small businesses also, same thing. And if you're running a volunteer organization, call for volunteers who can help. You may have volunteers who may be able to help you to look into your system security.
Now, on that note, that we'll end on that note, but I want to now zoom in on another area which we take for granted, but could have security compromises: our email clients. Now, of big risk is the most popular but aging big tech default emails like Outlook and Hotmail, for example, or Google and so forth. Tell us about this, and Ben, shed some light into why this is an issue.
Brian, email was invented in a time when only a few people wanted to communicate with each other through this system. And so it was designed to be easy to use in terms of being able to get your message across. In those days, decades ago, the focus wasn't on trying to authenticate who is sending you this email and whether they are who they say they are, and whether the message inside is genuine or not. So fast forward to the year 2023, and in fact, we've been experiencing this for maybe about 10, 20, 30 years now, that it is relatively easy to impersonate someone in email. And unfortunately, that's how it is. We've already learned to be careful when we receive a phone call. We don't immediately assume that we know who it is who's calling us. But in email, it's a bit riskier because we don't have that voice that we can recognize. We are taking for granted many times that if the email from header says that it's from, for example, your volunteer organization or religious organization, that's coming from them. So unfortunately, there's still a lot on us as users to have to be careful when we receive email and remember that it can be fake.
Okay, and what are the other things that we need to look out for to protect ourselves?
I hope that if anyone's listening who's got influence over the email providers, either you're an industry leader or big customer or national regulator, help to nudge the whole industry towards developing more secure communication systems. But in the meantime, the rest of us have to be alert, have to look at our emails critically and be careful before we click anything. Because they may not be out to get you for money. I think we have gotten some good habits of watching out when somebody claims to be a Nigerian prince and offering you
Yes.
$1 million, right? But sometimes they don't talk about money. They actually just say, hey, here's a link to download the minutes of our last volunteer group meeting. Or here's a link to a Zoom call for some religious prayer session. So we got to be careful because those could be downloading things. So we have to be just alert.
Now, on that note, Ben, thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been great having you as a co-host today. And I look forward to seeing you the week after, as next week we have Chinese New Year holidays, so there won't be a show on.
Great.
Thank you, Ben. We've been speaking to Benjamin Ang, Head of Cyber and Homeland Defence, a Center of Excellence for National Security at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies at the Nanyang Technological University in Singapore, on BIZTECH's Asia Pacific Cybersecurity Show. I'm Brian Fernandez. This show will be on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as our social media platforms. It will also be on our syndication partners, TV stations, radio stations, and websites. Thanks a lot for tuning in.